Edu-Magicians, welcome to the Edu-Magic Podcast with your host, Dr. 𝚘𝚊𝚗𝚊𝚗. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of Edu-Magic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
I'm 𝚹𝚘𝚊𝚗𝚊𝚗, host of the Partial Credit Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey Edu-Magicians, it's Sam, and before we start into this episode, I want to share with you about an amazing resource. It's called the Educator Candidate Member Portal. AAEE provides you with resources such as virtual job fairs, a job board, interview tips and prep, resume building, webinars. You can even get a copy of the Job Search Handbook digitally. So head on over to aaee.org and create your free Educator Candidate Member account today. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Edu-Magic Podcast. My name is Dr. 𝚘𝚊𝚗𝚊𝚗, and today I have with me another doctor, Dr. Joanna Zimmerly. She is an assistant professor of ed tech at APSU, and I'm so excited to geek out with another ed tech professor. If you're a pre-service educator out there and you want to get connected, turn up the volume on this episode. Get your notes out. We are going to be dropping some knowledge bombs. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you here today. It's great to finally talk to you. If you don't know our background, friends, we have been chatting back and forth for about a year now, but it's so much fun to finally chat with you. And we're going to share about our passions for professional learning networks, especially for those future educators. Before we get into kind of like the meat of our show today, Joanna, can you walk us through your teaching story? Everybody has one, and I would love to hear your teaching story and how you got started in education.
Yes, and I'm excited to share that with you. So I taught elementary school for 10 years, and during that time, I was working on my master's in instructional technology and then my doctorate in ed leadership because I knew that I wanted to teach college way back when I was a future teacher, like a lot of your listeners, when I was working on my bachelor's in elementary education, because I loved talking with my instructors about teaching and learning, and I also loved being on the college campus. Everybody there was just so passionate about learning and about teaching. It just felt right. So way back then, I made it my goal to teach at the college level someday, and I've been doing that for the past 4 years now. I teach technology courses, like you mentioned, to pre-service and in-service teachers at Austin Peay in Tennessee.
That's wonderful. That's awesome. I like how you wanted to be a college professor even as you were studying to be a teacher. My dad always says, Sammy, being on the college campus makes you stay young. And I think it's so true, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I like to keep current with what the young people are doing. So, I've got my Netflix subscription and I, turn on the music that I think they listen to because I want to be kind of immersed in that culture. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, I love that. So today we're talking a little bit about professional learning networks, and I know that that's a topic that's near and dear to both of our hearts. But if you could start us off with a definition, what is a PLN, and why should we even be starting to think about one as future educators?
Sure. So a PLN is a personal learning network. To me, it's the people you turn to when you want to ask questions or share ideas about teaching. And your PLN doesn't just happen online. It can also happen face-to-face with, your coworkers and colleagues. But my online PLN is so much larger and more diverse than the educators that I work with face-to-face because it's not limited to my local area. It's global. I can connect with people across the country and even across the globe. Now, I do tend to just use Twitter for my PLN, but there are certainly many educators in other online spaces like Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. But I really like Twitter limits your characters because you have to be a lot more intentional and concise with what you write. And there, for me, are just fewer distractions on Twitter than with other social media accounts. I can just focus on education. I just go to Twitter for that. Whereas in other spaces, I might get sidetracked looking at puppies, babies, and what people are cooking for dinner, So that, to me, that is what a PLN is.
I love that. I like how you're like, well, Twitter's where I can go for education and I don't have to see all those puppy pictures. I know exactly what you mean. And go down all that scrolling. I love that. So, whenever you introduce the topic of professional learning networks with your students and you share with them, this is a connection you can have not only with the people in your school, your district, but around the world. How do they take that topic? How do they engage with their professional learning networks as future educators? What are some things you do to help support them and help them grow in that area of Twitter and getting connected?
Wow, there's so many things I could say about that. They are, first of all, really receptive. And in my courses, I make it optional and I allow my students to either use Twitter or to use a private discussion board on our learning management system to share their ideas. But to introduce the PLN assignment, I share with students some of the research that I've done on the benefits of a PLN and why they need one. And so I've come up with three main reasons. There are certainly more than these, but I tell them the first reason that you need a PLN as a future teacher is because you can start learning about resources like educational websites, apps. You can get lesson plans, and all of these things can be useful as you complete coursework, as you have to write your mini lessons, as you do your internship and your student teaching. And I've learned about so many new resources just by scrolling through my newsfeed. I'm talking about Twitter here. As I'm scrolling through, I remember several years back when I was still in my elementary classroom, I learned about vocabulary, and I could see that totally being a website that future teachers are interested in. It's just a website where you get access to rap and hip hop songs that are based on educational content. It's like back in my day, we had Schoolhouse Rock, and that was really innovative. But now, with vocabulary, it makes learning more fun and interesting for kids. They can sing the lyrics and remember the content. And so anyway, that's just all to say, if it were not for my PLN on Twitter, I might not have heard of vocabulary. It was just because somebody tweeted about it that I went and visited the website. So anyway, the first reason that I tell my future teachers they need a PLN is because you are just going to be exposed to tons of awesome resources that you can use now while you're in school prepping, but then again, as you have your own classroom. And the second reason that I tell future teachers they need a PLN is because it allows them to learn about what they want to learn about in their own time. In college, you are often learning about what the college has deemed important. Your instructor has a laundry list of topics that they have to include. If it's on the syllabus, they have to cover it. But what happens when you're sitting in a classroom and maybe you hear about something and you want to learn more about it? Well, if you want to dive deeper, my advice would be turn to your PLN, ask questions, and get more information. I use Twitter to direct my own professional development, and that's what I tell my future teachers. Use it to direct your own professional development. You can use hashtags to search for the topics you're interested in, like tips for teaching ELL students or tips for teaching online. That's a topic of interest right now is teaching online. And you can just get so many interesting ideas about teaching and learning. And not only that, but diverse ideas and perspectives that I think can help mold you as you're working toward becoming a teacher. So to recap, reason number 2 that you need a PLN is to direct and maximize your own professional learning. And then the last reason that I share with my teachers that they need a PLN is because of the support you can find. Connecting with other educators can give you a sense of belonging and community that can help you make it through those dark days when you're just so stressed and you're so swamped, but you can turn to your PLN. Sometimes you might even just have to tweet out like, hey guys, I need some encouragement here. And you're going to get a flood of encouragement coming in through those tweets. You read through those, that's going to pump you up and help you go back in the next day, and keep going. So yeah, using your PLN for support, I think, is invaluable to future teachers.
Absolutely. And I agree with all three of those. It's a place where I can go and get support. I can be challenged in my own thinking too, ask those questions, engage in conversation. I have found, I don't know about your ed tech class, but for my ed tech class, that's where I get all my goodies from. I go to Twitter and Instagram. What are people using in their classrooms? Flipgrid. Okay, I need some of that. Zoom. Okay. Google Classroom. All right. I'm going to be adding these things in because these are what actual teachers are using in their classrooms.
Yes, a lot of times professors can kind of get disconnected with what's going on out there because they've been teaching for a while. I mean, I've been out of my elementary school classroom for 3 going on 4 years now, and so it's just another way to keep current.
Yes, I love that. And as a higher ed professor, finding other higher ed people on social media like Twitter and Instagram, I don't know, but it's kind of hard. I don't really see a lot of us out there. So being able to model that for our future teachers, saying, hey, this is how I'm connecting with my field, this is how I'm staying current and seeing what's out there, and I can bring it back to you. And hey, you can come into this space too. Everybody's welcome here. I love that. So we talked about what a professional learning network is, why our future teachers need one, those top 3 reasons. Now, we have some people who might still be on the fence, but let's talk about how we can get started in getting connected. What are some tips for us to even just dip our toe in the professional learning network pool of awesomeness? Because it is really awesome, the stuff you're going to find out there. But how do we start taking those small steps towards becoming a connected educator?
So, first of all, I would say decide which platform you're going to use. I am an advocate of Twitter, like I mentioned, but you could go with YouTube, Facebook, Instagram as well. But whichever one you decide to use, create your professional account. I think that it needs to be separate from your personal account unless you're really not using the personal account that much and you're not posting anything that could possibly be offensive in any way. I just encourage my students to keep your personal and professional separate. And so when you create your professional account, I think the first thing that counts is having a professional profile photo. That's the first impression that other users are going to get about you. So smile at the camera, dress like you would for that desired position. If it's business casual, from the waist or chest up is good. No sunglasses, but eyeglasses are okay. And then I also tell my future teachers, if you are going to be a physical education teacher, it's okay to wear athletic clothing in your profile photo. So that's number one for me because a picture is worth 1,000 words. So you want to get that right. Secondly, your username. You don't want to have any potentially inappropriate words in your username. I advocate that it should include part of your own name, like your last name. So, for example, on Twitter, I'm Dr. Zimmerly, but I've seen my students use Ms., Mrs., or Mr. Or Coach in front of their last name, or they might put their title and their name and then the subject they want to teach in their username. When I am connecting with people online, if I see a name that I don't recognize or it's just like random letters and numbers, I'm like, gosh, who is that again? So that's why I think it's important to get that username right. And if you've created an account in the past and you need to change that username, most platforms, I think you could go into the settings and change that as needed. And play around with it and get a username that's not already taken. And that way it'll be easy for others to find you and connect with you and share with you. And so thirdly, I would tell future teachers, spend some time on your bio section. With any platform, there's going to be an area where you can include like an about me. And so I think that should reflect where you are and where you want to be. If you're currently a student, you could include your major and the college you attend. You can include some hashtags like aspiring, hashtag English teacher. You can even put in there hashtag pre-service teacher, hashtag future teacher. That's just going to help other users know who you are, what you're about, and be able to find you and connect with you. And then finally, I know on Facebook and Twitter, you have the option to add a header photo. And so I would just say you could add that. I think that helps to just like clarify, who you are, what you're all about. I would just say add a header photo that's related to education or to the subject that you're wanting to teach and make sure it's not copyrighted. And I see a lot of times students are finding these really cutesy photos, but they have like a watermark over top of them, meaning that it's copyrighted. They didn't get permission to use that. So just use like a search engine like Google or Creative Commons to find photos that are labeled for reuse. And that can just kind of help set your profile apart. So the first thing would be, establish your account. Make sure that it's professional. If you're using your personal one, clean it up. And that way people will know that you are a professional future teacher. So now I just have a few tips for getting connected. So once you've created your account, I would say first connect with educators that you already know who use the platform you've chosen. So that could be your instructors, your former teachers, your classmates, or if you've done any clinical experiences, teachers that you've observed, see if they have an account in that platform and start following them. Second, the search bar is your friend. So with all of these platforms, there is a way to search for keywords, whether they call it hashtags or keywords. Just go to the search bar, and if you're thinking about teaching middle school, you could type in middle school or hashtag middle school. You could type in high school, second grade, ELL for English language learners, or SPED for special education. Whatever topic that it is that you're interested in, use that search bar, and you're going to find out the latest in regard to those topics. And that way, that's a good place to start to find more information for your own learning, and then also information that you could share with others, or if you're on Twitter, you could retweet it. And you'll also find a lot of relevant users to follow that way. Because if you're interested in special education and you're seeing the same person post a lot of really good content over and over, that's a person you're going to want to follow and connect with, and that's a person you could reach out to for questions in the future. And then that leads me into the third thing. When you do find a Twitter user that you really admire or connect with, you could also see who they are following. You could just go to their page and click on friends or following, depending on what platform you're on, and you'll find hundreds of other related users to follow.
I loved all of those tips. The connecting, see who people you enjoy seeing content from, and check out who they're following, check out who their followers are. And I like to tell my students, you don't have to follow somebody back if they follow you. So don't feel like you always have to friend them or follow them back. Look at their profile, look what they're sharing. Is that feeding your teaching soul? Yes? Okay, great. Let's go give them a follow. If not, that's okay. Keep moving on.
That is a very good point. Just the other day, I was looking for some teachers to recommend that my future student follow, and I was going to these people's profile, and they had in their bio section what they taught, but then the content that they were posting had nothing to do with education. And so I really couldn't recommend several users for that reason. So that's a good point. Look through their feed and see what they're posting. Very good. Yeah. No. Once you've started following some educators, I think it's time to start posting and sharing or tweeting and retweeting content. And I have 3 tips for that area as well. I'd love to share. You should tweet or post original content or content that you found online that is about good, effective teaching and learning. You could also post about things that you're learning in your courses, or things that you've seen in classrooms you've observed, or original ideas you have. I think it's awesome if you can provide a link to an online resources or to photos, as long as you have permissions in place to share those. And you could use relevant hashtags when you post so that other people will be able to find what you're posting about. And you could also put other people's names into your post, like their username in, and that way they will notice your tweet. And I've had a lot of future teachers do that lately. They're wanting to get some tips about online teaching, and so they've included my Twitter handle in their post, and I love that. I'm so honored to be asked these questions. I love to share knowledge with them, and that catches my attention. So you could do that as well by putting a user's handle into your post. It's going to capture their attention, and then they're more likely, I think, to answer your question. A second tip would be you should tweet to ask questions or post to ask questions about teaching and learning. Again, you want to use relevant hashtags, and it's okay to put other users' handle in the post to capture their attention. I remember being in my undergraduate classes and having all these questions and thinking like, oh gosh, I wish I could ask a teacher. I wish I was connected to more teachers, And so if I could go back in time and use Twitter, I would get so many answers to my questions. So don't be afraid to ask those questions on whatever platform it is that you're using. And then third, this tip has to do with retweeting or sharing. You can share another user's content without commenting on it, or you can share it with a comment. So like on Twitter, that would be called just retweeting it, or retweeting with a comment. And sometimes I will just retweet something really quickly and not say anything about it. But I think it is nice to stop and add a comment about the article itself. That shows, for one, that you've read it, that you've done a little research on it. You could highlight something from it, like if it's an article or if it's a resource, highlight a way that you might use that in your future classroom, or ask a question about it. And again, use those relevant hashtags to bring awareness to the post. Now, I've talked a lot about finding other users and posting content, but I also had a bonus tip that I wanted to share. Or bonus tip for anybody out there that's wanting to get even more out of Twitter. And Sam, you hinted at this earlier, and I'm talking about Twitter chats. Twitter chats, Twitter chats. So Twitter chats happen almost every day of the week. They are conversations centered around all kinds of topics, not just in education, but many Twitter chats happen centered around topics in education, and they can each be followed using a unique chat hashtag.
Yes, I love Twitter chats. Do you have any tips to help people? Sometimes Twitter chats can be overwhelming, and especially if it's a first one, we might be breathing through a paper bag at the end. But what are some tips you have for participating in a Twitter chat and participating meaningfully, not just checking off the boxes, answering those questions, get in, get out, but what are some ways people can really engage in a Twitter chat with meaning and purpose behind it?
Well, first I would say choose a chat that is interesting and it's relevant to you. So choose one that's going to be relevant and meaningful to you, and find out who's hosting it, because I know I've tried to participate in chats in the past. I wasn't sure who the host was. And some of them were just no longer active. Maybe I heard about them from an article that was written even a few months before. And when I went in to try to participate, they weren't happening. So then one thing that I've done is reach out to who I think is supposed to be hosting it, just to confirm, is this happening on this day at this time? If not, when's the next one? Make sure that you know the time zone. A lot of chats happen that are hosted on the East Coast, like you. But I live, in Tennessee, and we're on Central Time in my part of the state. And so I know I've also shown up late for a chat before. So that's another thing you can ask of the chat host, what is the time for my time zone? Let's get that right. Another thing that I tell my future teachers is to use TweetDeck, and I've created a video tutorial on how to use that. It just helps organize. It just helps organize the chat. It just puts it into this really organized column format, so that you're not having to go back and forth to different opened up tabs on your computer. It can just organize the whole chat in this one space. So I would say use a tool like TweetDeck. And as far as creating meaningful content that you're posting about, you've got to have some critical thinking skills. You're wanting to be a future teacher, and so I would say you're probably going to have questions about whatever topic it is that the people are talking about. And so just kind of dig deep and think we're really grappling with the best way to teach human beings here. That is a very noble task. And so think about, what can you bring to the conversation? What questions can you ask to drive that learning even deeper? And I always tell my students, don't just say, I agree. You think of something else to add. And if you can't think of something else meaningful to state, then ask a question, or find a way to branch off of that topic. Maybe there's a related topic that you are more interested in learning about to continue to drive the learning. Don't just be the one that says, I agree. And also don't just be a passive observer. Now, I know with my first Twitter chat, I was afraid to say anything until it got going. So I understand that sometimes you might just want to be one that kind of is not so active. Maybe you're just there to watch and see what happens and what people are discussing while you build your confidence. But once you feel like you've got something to say, don't be shy. Just go ahead and say it. So yeah, I'm thinking those might be the things that I would suggest if you're getting ready to start in your first chat and maybe you're a bit intimidated by it.
Yes, I love using TweetDeck so I can focus in on just that hashtag. I can see if anyone replied to me in notifications or in DMs. I have all that right there in one spot, and I don't have to worry about refreshing my Twitter feed all the time, because TweetDeck will just do that for me, that's just lovely. Well, Joanna, this has been a fabulous conversation all about professional learning networks, what they are, why we need them, how we dip our toe into the water, and tips to getting connected and getting started, from bio to picture to TweetDeck and Twitter chats. Thank you so much for this fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I love talking about and to future teachers. This is really exciting for me.
Yay! Joanna, where can we go to connect with you and see all the great stuff you're doing with your future educators and stuff that they are learning about? Where can we connect with you over on Twitter?
Oh, I would love for you to go to my page. My username is at Dr. Zimmerle. It's DrZimMMERLE.
Perfect. And we'll find you over there and we'll connect with you there. Thank you so much, Joanna. This was a great conversation.
Great. Thank you, Sam.
And there you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out 𝚕𝚘𝚖𝚎𝚛.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram at @𝚕𝚘𝚖𝚎. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.